We have some big news to discuss today as recent reports have come out from Elliot Friedman highlighting that the Toronto Maple Leafs are looking to make a trade and one key potential target has emerged from the Ottawa Senators. So break that down in this episode of Leafs Digest as well as discuss what Elliot Friedman said the Toronto Maple Leafs key trade chip could be going forward. Stay tuned for all that. But before we do get into it, we do want to say that this episode is sponsored by Rentals.ca. Now, Darius, it is no secret that Leafs fans want moves. We want Brad Treliving to step up, and with the Leafs having clear holes in their lineup and injuries continuing to pile up, fans have been calling for Brad Treliving to make some shakeups to the team and make some moves. And if you want to feel like you want to make some changes in your life, then it is time to move.
You can rent houses, apartments, condos, whatever it is. Rentals.ca has you covered. From coast to coast, you can go straight to Rentals.ca's website that's clean and easy to use. You can pinpoint exactly on the map where you want to move, and Rentals.ca will find you the best rental listings.
Yeah, now I have personal experience with Rentals.ca. My brother used it to find his apartment. They are huge Leafs fans, so check out the link in the pinned comment and in the description as well. And shout out to Rentals.ca for sponsoring this one, and we really appreciate that. Now, Darius, let's get into a fun video today. It's going to be an interesting one. Tons of reports are starting to come out. We have all the injury bugs going down with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Matthew Nyes, all this stuff going. And Elliot Friedman on his 32 Thoughts podcast a few days ago said a few interesting things, and he gave some insight as to what the potential trade pieces could be. So here's what he had to say on the latest 32 Thoughts podcast. He said the Leafs are reluctant to part with their 2024 first, Easton Cowan or Fraser Minton, and prefer to acquire a player with term or a player that they know they can extend at the deadline. It seems like Brad Treliving just wants all the positives with none of the negatives at this deadline, but going on, he says that this leaves Namella as the main trade piece, and it makes sense to move him for a top 4D that helps now and in the future, and there won't be much room on the right side for him to break out. So Namella is the guy we're going to be not necessarily focusing on because there's a couple targets we're going to be focusing on. But Darius, what are your thoughts on this? It seems like they obviously want to improve the D core. That's the biggest thing right now. I think they're putting a hold on the goaltender trade situation. We saw Samsonov get called up. Martin Jones is playing at a crazy Vezina level through a little bit of games. But what are your thoughts on this? They don't want to get rid of Cowan or Minton or their first, which I guess makes sense. But it's also, I know a lot of Leafs fans out there aren't happy with this report.
Yeah, I don't hate trading Niemela. I feel like he will be a good player, but I mean, if you can upgrade significantly, is anyone really untouchable unless you're Connor McDavid, right? Like, I don't hate some of those trade scenarios, but I don't like the idea of untouchables at times too. Like they're talking about Fraser Minton and obviously Easton Cowan being untouchable, and they're very reluctant to move on from them. I think if the right trade presents itself, you should probably move on from those players if you can upgrade right now. I know that they are the future of this team, but if you can upgrade right now in your cup window, why wouldn't you take an opportunity for that? And like you said, based on that report from Friedman, Treliving wants all the good and none of the bad, and I just feel like that doesn't happen in the NHL. You're going to have to eat dirt very often, usually, especially if you're the Leafs, right? Because a lot of teams like to mess with the Leafs as well. So that idea of just getting away scot-free and, not having to take any of the negatives, I don't think it's going to work out. But I think there are some pretty interesting trade targets that the Leafs could go after.
And let's get right into those. And let's start with the article. Now, there's a few different reports that are going down, Darius. Basically, I'll throw up this report here. Trevor Zegras reportedly is, quote, in play, and the Senators could trade Jacob Chychrun as seismic moves loon around the NHL and around the league. Now, Darius, what are your thoughts on this guy here? He's an interesting target. This is the one we're going to be focusing on today. He was listed as the number 10 trade target as the Ottawa Senators are looking to retool on the fly. This article basically goes on to say that, a reasonable $4.6 million cap hit, is it worth giving up Fraser Minton and or Timothy Liljegren in a trade for Jacob? What are your thoughts on this guy? He's a very good player, although he has some, he has a no move clause or no trade clause. I don't know. Mm-hmm. This is an interesting one, but he would look good in a Leafs uniform instead of an Ottawa Senators one.
Yeah, I was hoping that the Leafs were going to trade for him last year because last year it was pretty obvious the Coyotes wanted to move on from him. And, he didn't have a no movement clause. He now has a no trade clause. Actually, I believe it's a no trade clause that kicked in this year. He signed until the end of next year. So you're not really, have to commit to him long term if you do want to move on from him or if you do want to re-sign him at a reasonable amount. Like you said, $4.6 million. That's very reasonable for a player of his caliber. He has 26 points right now in 36 games with the Ottawa Senators so far this year. That is a good season on a really abysmal team. The Sens have not been good this year. So this is a standout player. He is one of the better defensemen in the NHL. I was really hoping the Leafs were going to target him last year, and I feel like a player like Chychrun would put the Leafs kind of over the hump there. I feel like that would put them right into contender status. The forwards are the Leafs' strong suit. There are no issues there, especially with the way the team is playing now and kind of a culture reset. We've seen it so far this year with some of the rough stuff. But yeah, Chychrun would put the team over the top. That would be a fantastic move and a reasonable cap hit. It's just up to the Ottawa Senators because he has a no movement clause on a pretty reasonable deal. And I know teams don't like to trade in division.
Yeah, and Chychrun, like you said, unbelievable season so far this in 26 points in 36 games. And there's a lot of Leafs fans out there, and I saw this on Twitter, basically saying that it might take, or at least a lot of Senators fans as well, it might take more to trade for him now than it did back then. And now he has one less year of control, just given the way that things are going. And the article basically says, like I mentioned it, the Senators and Steve Staios would ask for a massive package from Treliving, and rightfully so, even though the Sens blue liner is signed for next year as well at a reasonable cap. And I mean, if I'm Steve Staios, I am not trading Chychrun unless I'm getting one of Fraser Minten or Ethan Cowan. And then if you line that up with what the report came out a few days ago, is that they don't want to get rid of either Cowan or Minten or the 2024 first. And that kind of blends into what you were saying about there's times where untouchables, I mean, Chychrun would be a guy, he would be a centerpiece of the future. I suspect that they'd be, and hopefully he'd be willing to waive his no-trade clause and sign long-term with the team. He's only 25 years old. He would be staying in Canada. It's not like he's coming from Los Angeles or California or anywhere like that. I would love this guy. He seems like a good fit, a great fit, but it would be a lot to give up, especially because there's 31 other teams that would love to get him and would be willing to give up a lot as well. So any quick final thoughts on him before we move on to the second target here?
Well, I'll pose the question to those in the comments section as well. If the Sens came with an offer of like, hey, give us a first round pick and Fraser Minten, and you consider Fraser Minten an untouchable, but you get Jacob Chychrun in return, I think I'm leaning towards, yeah, do that, because Chychrun is still only 25 years old. You have an opportunity to re-sign him after next season. You still have him locked up for next season. This, of course, is if he was to waive his no-trade clause and be willing to come to Toronto. So that would be, a hefty price to pay. And you're kind of giving away a little bit of the future, but you got to look at the now. Austin Matthews is here. He's in his prime. William Nylander just re-signed for 8 years. You want to win a Stanley Cup with this core of players, and this is a guy that can help you do that.
Yeah, so yeah, that trade proposal you said, Fraser Minten in first for Chychrun, would you do it, yes or no? Leave it in the comment section down below. And let's quickly run over one more trade target that this was from this article, and it's surprise, surprise, Chris Tanev, who has yet to be dealt. We suspect that he will be dealt towards the, closer to the trade deadline. He's at 7 points in 38 games this season. He slowed down a little bit. He's still a phenomenal defensive player. He's never really been a guy to score a lot of points. Darius, we've kind of discussed him before, but do you have any change of stance on him now? Obviously, he wouldn't necessarily fit. He would fit the team absolutely in the mold, but Brad Treliving said he wants to acquire a player with term or a player they know that can extend, which Tanev, I think, would be willing to extend with the Maple Leafs from what reports are from Freeman and Cervalli and all these guys. So any quick thoughts on Tanev before we wrap up here? Chychrun's a more fun option for me, but Tanev might be a more realistic one.
I think there's more question marks with Tanev than Chychrun, obviously, but just question marks in general. He has, bad history of injuries. That's something you want to look at. Will he resign? Probably. What's the dollar amount looking like? What's the term looking like? Because he's already in his 30s. He would be a great fit for the Leafs, but I think he's going to be a closer to trade deadline move, because if it was up to the Leafs, I think they would have already had Chris Tanev on the team. I think that the Flames are reluctant to trade him before the deadline so they can get as much as possible. And deep down, honestly, I believe that if the Leafs were to get Chris Tanev, it would be because the Flames kind of exhausted all their other options and they aren't happy with the return from other teams. So I think it's still definitely a possibility, but I think there are a bunch of hurdles and things you want to look at, a couple of question marks. So I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments if you would want Chris Tanev, but like you said, I think the spicier option is definitely Chychrun.
Yeah, give me Chychrun all the way. And I would have liked Nikita Zadorov, but that was months ago now at this point. But that'll wrap up the video. Let us know what your thoughts are on these guys, and would you accept Darius's proposed trade? And if you wouldn't, let him know why. But thank you guys for watching, and thank you to Rentals.ca for sponsoring this one. Check them out in the pinned comment and the description. We'll see you tomorrow.